You're listening to the ParaHouse Entertainment Network. Come join us as we take you deep into the fire to the paranormal realms of hauntings, UFOs, ETs, alien abductions, strange creatures, and the vastness of universal consciousness as we continue to seek what is not supposed to exist as we search for the truth that only comes from going into the fire. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Into the Fire. How's everybody doing on this fantastic Tuesday night? And we have got a fantastic show with you tonight and for you. Let me introduce our guest host, our normal host, I should say, instead of guest host. It's going to be one of those days. Billy,
one of those weeks.
how you doing?
Doing good, brother. How are you?
Well, I'm doing fantastic, I think. Throat's giving me a little bit of a difficulty right now, but I think we will overcome it and get over it. We have got just an outrageous show planned for tonight. I am so excited to have both of these gentlemen here, and we're going to bring them on in just a second. I'm going to let them go through their bio and everything else. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have Patrick Jackson, the author of Quantum Paranormal, and also Steve Colbert. And we're going to have both of them on here. I'm going to bring them on the air right now. Hey, guys. How's everybody going?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Great.
Cool. Excellent. I'm so glad to have you on here tonight. And I know this is going to be a very informational show for a lot of people. And it's something that we really need to look at. I haven't read the book yet. I have looked into your videos and followed everything else, but I think it's really something to talk about. And I hope we can open up some minds tonight, because that's what we like to do. We are all about having people do their, giving them some information and letting them be able to do the research and be able to have them look at it for themselves and make their own determinations. So, Patrick, would you please give me a little bit of a bio about yourself? Tell the folks about you.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having us first. It's been
Our pleasure.
It's been a long battle getting here, so you know.
Yeah.
So basically, my background is that I work predominantly in IT, predominantly in the area of reverse engineering. I basically reverse engineer processes within database problems. Involves a lot of logic and basically modeling and construction, things like that. So about 5 years ago, I decided to try the same kind of thought process on the paranormal. So what I did was I stayed in a place called 30 East Drive, which is known to be like one of the most violent poltergeists in the UK, if not Europe, and some would argue the world. You know. So I stayed there for quite a long time, and I just wanted to see if I could notice anything. I didn't actually go in there to write a book or anything like that. I just wanted to see if I noticed anything. And while I was in there, I started noticing things that other people didn't. And basically, I had the whole thing filmed. So I started going over it with a real tooth comb. And it took me about 3 years to really get my head around it, because it really confused me for a long time. I mean, I was completely confused for a long time. But then finally, I finally broke the puzzle. And everything started coming into place. And the result of that is a book called Quantum Paranormal, which is, how I describe it, is a 21st century analysis of the paranormal phenomena. And what happened was that me and Steve, our work actually crossed paths. Because once I identified what was going on, I actually contacted Steve to say, look, I think I found something. Because he mentioned something in his documentary, Patient Zero. No, sorry, Patient 17.
Yeah, 17.
And I said, I think in that documentary, he says we think there's what they call like an alien internet, like an alien network, but we don't know where it is. And I think I found it. And so basically, I got in touch with him about that, and we started talking. I showed him what I found, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I've got one of these. We analyzed it like 10 years ago. Was it 2012 or something? When was it?"
Yeah, it was 2012. Yeah. So Jaime Masan actually has the sphere, and he allowed Rick Shaw and I to go down there and get a sample of it, and I took it back to the States and analyzed it with some high-tech equipment I was allowed to use at the job I had at that time. And the results were very interesting. I mean, the sphere was made of titanium. That was super strong, as it had been reinforced with carbon nanotubes, which are the world's strongest known material. And it also had voids about a half a micron across, deliberately introduced into the material to lighten it. Very regular voids. And the carbon nanotubes appeared to act as the electronics of the device and perhaps propulsion as well. I theorize that it's propelled by the Byfield-Brown effect, where an anti-gravity effect is induced when a capacitor is charged at high voltage, and there's a thrust in the direction of the positive pole of the capacitor. And that would explain why the spheres can go any direction. And their spherical shape is perfect for a scalar wave antenna to beam power to them via a Tesla-type wireless power transmission system. So the power source could be anywhere. It could be in the interior of the Earth, on the moon, or I suspect it's on the moon, actually, based on FBT reports. And there's a whole network of these things, like Patrick was saying, and it performs apparently a surveillance and information network across the Earth and maybe further.
Yeah, I believe maybe further. A lot further.
So in a nutshell, what's going on is number one, I don't think paranormal activity, or to be specific, poltergeist activity in houses and buildings, has anything to do with human death rates or human death or human history. It's completely irrelevant. What generally happens is it's a building which is brand new or could be old, and suddenly it'll become active. And then the researchers go in and they dig the history books, and then they have to go back 400 or 500 years to find a story that roughly fits. And then they say, "Oh, it must be him," you know. But when you look at the mathematics of it, it's crazy, because it's like 500,000 people. We should be having 500,000 new ghosts every year, at least.
That's a very good point.
500 million new ghosts every year, year in, year out. And it doesn't happen. What you find is paranormal activity stays same low level, but it moves around. So it'll go from A to B, and then, so forth. So I kind of figured what's going on here. So what I did was when I was in East Drive, I kind of noticed something, because I found after about a week of being there, I noticed, or I saw what people call the black monk, which is basically it's a vertical line of black mass, and it moves around in a very digital way.
I heard of it.
And I saw it, and it was like I've seen that before. I've seen the way it moves before, because where I grew up was like a UFO hotspot, and I was always seeing these little balls of light whizzing over the street lights. And back in World War II, they were called foo-fighters. Yeah, and when I saw this, it's the same thing.
Yeah, orb-like things that would go into the ships or go into the aircraft, really unnerve a lot of people, and very, very popular. And you mentioned orbs. We've seen orbs all over the place. Not to be conceived as the dust orbs. We're talking about actual orbs, or very straight line path, very energetic, a lot of energy. I always call them an energy orb, because even sometimes they pulse when we see them on a recorder or video. Very, very, very intense, very very cool in their own
Some are apparently solid, and some are just pure energy.
Yes.
It's the same object operating in different states and modes.
Yeah,
it's exactly what the pilots saw during World War II. Sometimes I'll see them as silver spheres. They'll come through the aircraft. They look like an energy ball. Then they leave. Then they become solid again. It's basically using a thing called quantum tunneling, where it can basically go through solid objects and then become solidified again.
Right, right. It's interesting because on some of the reports that we have gotten, and I've been in the UFO field for a long, long time also. And, when you start seeing some of the reports of orbs, we've seen these orbs in the air. Some people even think that they morph into a craft, and all that is just doing exactly what you just said. It takes that shape and then it goes back into an orb-like thing. Yeah. Plus, we've also heard of many reports, even in near sighting areas and so forth, that these orbs are seen in wooded areas, going around trees, moving around, being able to navigate them themselves. Whether it's a personal vehicle that goes back to the mothership, I don't know what it is, but I know that we've encountered some of those also.
So in the book,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. In the book, it identifies 3 different types. First, you have what are called the Type 1 firewall spheres, which basically they operate at 100,000 feet, low Earth orbit, and they operate in lines and clusters. So you'll see maybe 50 or 100 of them in a big cluster. And what they do is actually they intercept external groups and interests. So they basically intercept external space threats. So UFOs don't crash; they're shot down. Yeah, and then they're disabled, and they land in the sea or they land in the woods or something.
Are they shut down by high EMF pulse?
I don't know what they use, but it's something pretty amazing. And basically, we've got video of these things being intercepted. And they always use the same method. It's like you have one on top, one below, and one from the side, and you have the craft in the middle. So they triangulate on it. And so it can't move anywhere for it to get away. So the thing is, when you look at that kind of system, I thought, well, okay, how does this work? So obviously they're communicating with each other, right?
Right.
So if you've got like a craft over, say, England, right, and you've got a group of these spheres over Scotland, and another over another part of the country, how are they going to communicate with each other without the one in the middle knowing about it? Because it's going to signal and intercept, right? So the only way you can do it is by relaying it off something, like what we do with our stealth fighters. We relay off a satellite, and it then goes to another satellite down to the Pentagon or wherever it goes, right? This works in reverse, so it relays off the ground. And what's happening is that all these haunted buildings, they have these foo-fighters in them, like a different version of them, a smaller version, and they operate as a relay system. So when the signals start coming down, they get rebroadcast up, or they broadcast to the next one in line. And if you map all the haunted areas in the UK, you'll find there's a line in the middle, which is all 20 miles apart, which is a relay system. This is why paranormal activity starts on, say, on a Monday, and nothing will happen for a week. And then it will start again, maybe a random day the following week. It's because, like any transponder, when there's no signals, it just shuts down. It goes into like a dormant state. So it just roams around, but it doesn't do anything. Yeah. But once the signals start coming in and out, what do you have? You have emissions.
Right.
So you have, we've found that these things detect everything from radio waves to gamma rays. So that's both ends of the spectrum. So you've got everything in between. You've got infrared, you've got microwave, you've got X-ray, you've got all sorts. And so the thing is, you can say, well, if these things are emitting signals that are probably very powerful, you're going to get a side effect. Like if you're close to a microwave transmitter, you're going to get affected. You're going to get a cancerous effect, right?
Yes,
exactly. So depending what type of wave it is. I mean,
right,
if it's ionizing or not.
The type of wave these things broadcast is particularly apt to cause cancer and other diseases too. They're called scalar waves in the classified literature, and they're a different type of electromagnetic wave from the normal transverse wave that are talked about in the textbooks. In the transverse wave, the electric and magnetic fields are perpendicular to each other, and the wave moves perpendicular to both. In a scalar wave, the E and the B fields are still perpendicular to each other, but the wave, but they're 90 degrees. They're not in phase. They're 90 degrees apart, and they're a more fundamental form of EM radiation than the transverse waves mentioned in the textbooks. And instead of interacting with the electrons in matter, they interact with the nuclei. That's probably why it bounces off the ground, like Patrick said.
Interesting. Very interesting. You know, because
So, yeah,
They
sorry.
have biological effects too.
Yeah, so what happens is that these objects use a field-based propulsion system, right?
Mhm.
So when they need to broadcast, and they're using the reason why they use buildings, by the way, is because it shields the emissions from external detection.
They're
So
all
when
like
these
gravity
things,
waves.
yeah, when these things broadcast, they emit electronic signatures. So they need to use something to help shield it, to then blend in with background radiation. So it's like a stealthy communication system
Uh-huh.
that only activates when it needs to.
It's difficult to detect scalar waves with our type of equipment. You have to use a round capacitive antenna to detect them with high efficiency.
Yeah.
They tend to pass through matter a lot more readily than transverse waves do.
Can you pick it up from a Geiger counter or something like that?
No, you can either use a caduceus wave or caduceus antenna with two coils of wire that are reversed towards each other, or
Yeah.
you can use the best type of antenna is a round metal ball with capacitive material on the inside, like dielectric material on the inside, and then another layer of conductive material, so it's a round capacitor, and that'd be an omnidirectional scalar wave antenna, and that's what I'm led to believe the government's using on a lot of this equipment that uses scalar waves. That, for example, the Tesla shielding that they can block missiles with, and
Right.
stuff like that. They can make big balls of energy with this technology,
Mm-hmm.
either cold or hot, depending on how you do it, and on the potential of the antenna.
Yeah. Very,
So
very
what's really going on in these haunted houses is that, and the reason why the paranormal community as a whole haven't really got that far, to be fair, is because what happens is one of these spheres, they operate either in the basement or the attic, and then they deploy two smaller spheres.
Yeah.
So those two smaller ones, which are much smaller, they roam around the building and they basically are its eyes and ears to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you have paranormal effects that happen at the same time on different floors, because they're basically one's upstairs, one's downstairs, and then they basically signal each other to then do an action.
Yeah,
So
there's several sizes of these things.
yeah.
So some the size of a basketball, like the one I saw, and there's one the size of like a baseball or softball, and then smaller.
Exactly. Yeah, they deploy from inside.
Yeah. We've seen like a small little LED bulb that seems to move or become present. Let me ask you more about the paranormal side of it. I've spent a long time with the paranormal. Do you actually believe that there is paranormal activity that's going on?
You mean human-based, or?
Yes, human-based that is actual spirit energy.
Because, I think there's something there. But what I'm saying is that there seems to be two domains. One is artificial, is this thing playing up, and then you've got another one which is natural. And I think the natural one is still occurs, but it's very, very, it's nowhere near what's going. Yeah. So I would say that the artificial version of it is actually about 75%, 80% of what's actually going on. And so what happens is when people go into these houses and these objects are broadcasting, what they do is they move people around inside the building. The idea of that is to make space between the emission and the people. So if the sphere needs to broadcast up here and it's giving off a radiation, they have to move the people over here. So what happens is that generally they broadcast it upstairs, like on the top floor in a bedroom area. And then what will happen is they'll bang the door downstairs. So everybody goes downstairs, and then it goes quiet, and that's how it rolls. And so that's why, if you watch like Ghost Adventures and all these things, the first thing they say is, "Oh, there's a noise upstairs," because it's moving around. It's moving around. And then what will happen is that once they get to an area, they will all start to feel ill, or start to feel sick in groups. The only way you can do that is by a broadcast or an emission. So the way I look at it is that if you're close to these objects where they're broadcasting, as like they're giving off an emission, it's radiation poisoning. It's a form of radiation poisoning. The only thing is we can't detect the radiation, and we don't know, or maybe we can through what Steve's talking about. But But
You can, but you have to use the right type of antenna, and
Yeah.
it's in general harder to detect anyway.
yeah,
Well, there's so much, for me, I also work in a paranormal location. Been a volunteer for it for many, many years.
Mm.
It sits on a 300-acre piece of property, one of the strangest, bizarrest properties that I've ever known. See everything from portals to orbs to UFOs to strange creatures to everything, and it happens. It happens at this house all of the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of the land or if it's got a gigantic geo there that just pulls this stuff in. But, what we do, and doing it the old school, and Billy can also tell you, we just sit in one location. And yes, you will hear it upstairs or you'll hear it around you. And eventually they seem to be extremely nosy. If you don't leave and you don't move, then they come down to your area or where you're at and then hang in that area to communicate with you. Sometimes they will interact with you. And then other times you'll their presence there. It's just everything on you is your hair, your body's just keep that energy flow of the heavy energy around you. And sometimes you see them as shadow figures. Sometimes you see them as misty things, or you'll see them as the small orbs or the lights I was talking about. And even as full body apparitions, I know Billy and I were talking about it. Billy, I'll let you ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, I totally buy into what you're saying as far as them giving off emissions and the side effects to that stuff. Would you call that one of the side effects to one of these spheres, seeing the full body apparition, or even the disembodied voice?
No. So what I noticed was that these foo-fighter spheres connect to what I call like an insert and extraction process. So what's actually happening is, although most of the time they're basically run by artificial intelligence, so they just roam around doing their own thing, which is why sometimes you get really good responses in these houses, and other times they're really dumb, because you're not, on one hand, like our own drone system. Most of the time it's artificial intelligence just doing its thing, and then sometimes it's taken over by someone on the other end. And then what you have is sometimes they insert, and a bit like Star Trek, where they can beam people in,
Right.
and someone will come. And what happens is that they wear like a stealth material or stealth outfit, or using some sort of stealth technology that will hide them outside of our visual range. So what will happen is you'll see cameras like UV cameras or infrared cameras, and you'll see the slight outline of them. And what they really are is living
Sometimes
things.
they show up in the near infrared, but not in invisible light. You
Sorry?
can't see them. Sometimes they show up in the near infrared, but not invisible.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a case of, it's an insert process, and they can then walk around and do their thing, and sightsee or whatever they're here to do, and then leave again. Which is why you always get different figures or different shapes or different images in these places. It's basically, like in haunted houses, you have a lot of like where objects go missing and then reappear.
Yes.
The same thing.
My house.
The same process.
Even under flash photography as well.
It's the same process.
Yeah.
They're just pulling like a can, and instead they can actually move a living thing. It's the same process.
Yeah. Why do they take these things that they take? Because I always ask them to bring it back, and then it reappears sometime. But normally wherever they want to leave it.
Well, your thoughts are transmitted by scalar wave as well. I think they know what you're thinking, so they may respond to that.
Interesting.
Do you have any data indicating whether or not the disease rate or cancer rate goes up in areas that have high paranormal activity? Because it should.
You know what? I will tell you this, and it's not. It's funny. I know a lot of people who do this, and they do come up with illnesses. I
Not
might,
necessarily cancer, but
yeah. Sometimes with the people who deal with the UFO stuff and everything else seem to be able to pick up brain cancer extremely easy. And I just had a very good friend of mine go through a bout of that. And it's unusual because of the fact that for my case, and another person that has worked at the same location for a very long time, we seem to have neurological problems that become you get shorts in your neurological system, and you end up with neuropathy and things like that. Have you heard of that before? Is that's kind of like
I've never heard of any neurological problems, but yeah, I've heard of UFO abductees getting cancer more frequently because I assume because UFOs give off X-rays and scalar microwaves.
Yeah, the same with this is they emit a type of radiation that is hard to detect. It's the same. It's why you have haunted objects, like dolls or whatever, or even beds, right? It's because of this. Is that when you have these objects roaming around the house for a long time, the objects around them, like our own radioactive contamination, it will soak up that radioactive, contamination in objects, right?
Right.
So if that object is then moved and taken somewhere else, the people near it, like our own nuclear contamination, I can't speak, like our own nuclear, contamination, people get sick around it. So what happens is that these objects, which are roaming around, can detect this radiation, and then they'll go in and have a look at it and say, "What's that doing there?" And then wherever there's this contamination, they will start creating paranormal effects around it to get the people to get rid of it. So, if, for instance, there's a story about this family who bought a bunk bed.
Okay.
And there was just a wooden bunk bed, and they took it to their home and stuff like that. And the kids started complaining and crying and all sorts. And basically, the bedroom was going crazy. There was like noises and voices and banging and stuff like that. Even the mum and dad stayed in the bed and witnessed crazy stuff. They got rid of the bed. It all stops. Because the contamination is no longer there. These things just say, "Oh, it's gone. We can move on."
Right.
And the thing is that if we went back in time to like 1500s and saw a bunch of kids playing around a piece of uranium, which is radioactive, but we can't talk the language. So what do? You create effects. You throw things at them. You do things. You cause a drama, to then make them get rid of it. And that's what it is.
Interesting. Very interesting, because we call those haunted items, if we will. People bring these things from antique stores, everything else. There's been TV shows about them. So the haunted collector and so forth.
I mean, the museum's dedicated to them.
Yeah. And it's funny because we do have those areas, and EMF. I mean, when you go into a home, it has that. EMF and other detectors are just go ballistic.
Crazy,
And
because they're emitting an energy wave. They're emitting contamination. It's not hard to believe because our current drones, our own stealth drones, what the CIA uses stuff. They can detect nuclear signatures on the ground from unobservable heights. So if you've got a bit of technology or a craft that can do that, they can probably do it even higher.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. That's what it is, and it's once you put the pieces together, it all makes sense. Which is what my book is.
Paranormal EMF detectors are probably detecting the transverse lead over from the scalar waves. There's always some transverse waves given off when you generate scalar waves, and vice versa.
Very interesting. So I guess the biggest part about the paranormal side is you mentioned domains. So there is what you believe a true spiritual domain and then an artificial domain.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're working within both of those sides. Very interesting, and personally, I could agree with you.
Because I'll be straight with you. I mean, when I was little, my dog died. A week later, I saw my dog, and he was sitting in the kitchen, looking at me. You know, so and I didn't imagine that. You know, and also when I had a little bird that died as well, and I heard him flapping around the kitchen as clear as a bell, even though his body was dead in the cage. So I know that there is something there. I just don't know. I just know that what's going on in these buildings isn't the same thing. It's like it's imitating it, you know.
Yeah.
For instance, I can tell you how EVP works.
That's what I was. You're reading my mind.
So there is a few different mechanisms on how it works, but I'll tell you the primary ones. Is the first one is where you have like a recorder, like a digital tape machine or recorder, or your phone, and you'll record it, and you'll hear voices on the phone or the recorder that weren't there, right? You don't hear it with your ears; you just hear it on the phone.
Right.
So the only way you can do that is by broadcasting from the sphere a directed radio wave, which comes across a crosstalk on the circuit, and then it records it. This is why we don't hear it, because we use compressed air to hear.
Right.
Right. Then you have the other type where you can actually verbally hear.
Right. Disembodied voices, what we call disembodied voices.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you create sound waves? Well, you have to compress air and shape air. Right.
Yeah, exactly. You have the vocal cords, compressed air, and that's how it works.
That's right. So how do you compress air? You use a field-based propulsion system. You create force on objects, including air, and you vibrate it, and then it creates a sound wave.
Right.
So what happens is you can create very short-term, very quick bursts of sound.
Yes, like screams or the famous "Get Out." I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard to "Get Out."
Yeah. Again, the reason why they say that is because of the emissions.
Right.
You see, so it's a sign of just get out, because it's the emissions.
Now, what is your take on as far as the frequencies that we sometimes hear at these locations? Do you believe that that's part of it too?
Well, the frequencies are coming from the spheres. They're broadcasting different frequencies. Dogs don't like being in there. They go crazy with these frequencies.
I mean, there's so many times that we look at each other and we're like, our ears are ringing, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What generally happens, I think, is that when these spheres activate, they use diversionary tactics to get rid of people out the area. In fact, people have even found these objects on the floor, like the Ben sphere, which was a story a few years ago in the US. The guy took it home, and suddenly it came to life, and suddenly they had a poltergeist around the house. And they started banging doors and hearing weird music and all sorts. And it's because it's creating like a diversionary to say, look, you know, it doesn't actually do anything directly to you. It just causes like what I call scarecrow effects in order to make you move, to move out. That's what it is. And these things are emitting all sorts of waves, especially if they're broken or a bit smashed up. And dogs go crazy, cats go crazy, people go crazy. You know, people who stay in these buildings or have to stay in these buildings, you'll find that they go a bit potty. It's because of I think, yeah. so it's a case of the signals they're emitting are actually affecting your brain on a cellular level. And so, as you said, people get mental illness. They get depressed. They get all sorts of funny effects.
Fatigue, is that what we call the paranormal hangover, the fatigue and all the other stuff that goes along with it?
Yeah, like I say, these things have a lot of biological effects. And one thing worth noting, too, is that the scalar waves are a lot like a sound wave in the continuum. They're a longitudinal wave, not a transverse wave. So it's possible that you might be able to hear them if they were in the frequency range accessible to human ear.
Of human hearing, you know,
20 to 20,000 hertz.
It's funny because this comes in when Billy is talking about it, we've experienced at the same time, but some people don't get it. They don't hear it. I think it's related to your hearing or however it is, but or what you've experienced in your life. I think that these waves they just continue in your. It's like it's not tendinitis, but it's a high pitched just, and it's funny, even at the property that we have, that I've been at for a long time, this 300 acres, you can always hear an amazing humming noise. And we thought, well, that's a plant over here. And we thought that's this, or maybe it's a air dryer from one of the farmers or something like that. But I have personally gone around the whole area looking for it, and you get out of the area and all of a sudden you don't hear it anymore.
There's been a lot of mysterious noises like that the past 10 years or so, and experiencers often hear them more than normal people do as well.
Yes, and I am one of those, so I get to hear it continually, hopping on whenever I get close to it. So,
where's the 300 acres located again?
It's in just north of Franklin, Kentucky. It's called the Octagon Hall Museum, and a lot of Civil War, a lot of death, a lot of blood, a lot of loss of life has happened there, and it's been documented on several different shows. Including for the paranormal, and it is a very active place, wouldn't you say, Billy?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
But
some of
all of it, it's not just
that's
spirit side. We get the UFO side, and we get the cryptid side too. I mean, it's
the other night we were out there and we were watching moving lights, and the orb light move to the point where you could almost tell it move right and it will move right, move left and it will move left. It's jump up in the air and it will go in the air. It's like it has mental telepathy with you, or it's reading your mind or your thoughts.
I'm pretty sure they are. I mean, it reminds me of the phenomenon where people get together and meditate and say, we want you to draw a certain type of crop circle figure, and it'll appear the next couple of nights.
Yes, yeah,
several times.
Yeah, it's very strange. This whole area is a gray area, and I welcome any different types of stuff, because one of the things that we talk about many years that I have been sitting there is what causes the EVPs, and it's sometimes when you do recordings, you would almost hear a pop. And it was like it was coming from a different area. Or in some cases, if you listen very closely, you might hear the EVP before the EVP actually happens.
Yeah.
I
mean, I found the same thing. And what I found it's basically digital processing artifacts. So it's trying to process stuff, and it probably doesn't even understand the language that well. And it's trying to knit together different words to create a sentence. I mean, I've had it where you have one word in one voice, or one word in one voice, and then another word in a different voice, and it's sequenced together. And you hear pop, click, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
it's basically trying to it's using an artificial intelligence to recreate words by observation. So it samples different audio and sticks it together.
Okay. So my big question is taking this to the next step. What's this got to do with? Does it have anything to do with the satellite transmissions, the Elon Musk type of situations, the 5G? And is this a harmful thing for humanity to actually, let's say, dumb us down so that we don't develop? They have a planned agenda for us.
No, I don't think.
It's really hard to say. I doubt it's tuned to harm us or anything. But I mean, that don't care.
Good. No, I mean the this system has been in the game for a long time. I think since biblical times, because there's pictures of these spheres with Jesus.
Oh, I agree with you, but because you've always seen spheres or UFOs or something like that through all the great artwork in the past into the biblical times, and even with Jesus. I'm very familiar with the picture that you're saying that has a orb with Christ.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is that there's one outside the Vatican.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
You know, it's it's a sculpture, but it is identical to what we're talking about.
Oh,
So it's
And
like,
there's multiple religious sites that have had these spheres. I mean, there's video footage out there showing these spheres shooting from the sky straight down
mhm.
and then shooting back up.
The
Do you
one
believe
thing
that there's a particular reason why they show up at these locations?
I do have an idea. When I noticed that how it works is obviously it creates a ground-based dynamic network. Now, what it does is like if you imagine like our own cellular network, you have to take to move the network. You have to go there first, and then you have to hang around the area for a while testing the signals. And then once you test the signals, you think, okay, here's a good spot. We'll broadcast from here. You know, these objects do the same thing. Now and again, you'll see these spheres. They'll come down and they'll sit in the air for about maybe 4 or 5 hours, and they'll stay in the same spot, and then they'll move, and then they'll job around a bit like this, and they'll move around, and they'll go up here and stuff. And what they're doing is they're basically doing a network test. So they're basically checking the signals coming in, and then once they're happy, then it decides to broadcast from a particular area. So I think that's what you're referring to, is people see these things come down, and they'll sit there for a long time bobbing about, and then they'll leave.
I think when he's talking about, there was an interesting video out a few years ago, and I don't know if Stephen, if you saw it or not. It was it was over the Temple Mound, and this light.
In Jerusalem?
Pardon? Yes.
In Jerusalem? Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and it comes down, and it just goes poof, and just shoots right back up. Same type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And these as they're called, the firewall spheres, the ones at the top, they're seen a lot intercepting aircraft. There's been a lot of video of these things. I think because they're AI based, they misidentify sometimes different craft, and they will literally they do it different ways. Some are like bullets, and they'll just go right through the aircraft like a bullet, and the aircraft the wing will fall off and it will fall out the sky. Other ones, like fire aircraft, will disable the electronics and it will just fall out the sky. So these things have been seen many times intercepting external or our own aircraft. And I think it's by accident. I don't think it's something intentional. I think it's by accident.
And UFOs can deploy them and use them as weapons as well. That's also happened.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And there's another thing. Spontaneous human combustion.
Yes.
Yeah. There's only a few. I think there's only about 200 or 300 cases worldwide.
Yes, not very many at all.
Right. When you really look at it, it's like, well, hang on a minute. If you got these spheres in buildings and one malfunctions or goes wrong, and it's using microwaves or gamma rays, probably very high-powered waves. If you're in the way of that, you're going to fry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you look at these people who've had that, their arms are okay, their legs are okay, but there's nothing left.
Even the chair that they're sitting in doesn't even.
That's right. It's directed microwaves.
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting. That makes
absorbing scalar energy can cause things to become more flammable and/or spontaneously ignite.
Mm-hmm.
Areas where UFOs have been hovering often have spontaneous fires. So yeah, that very well could be.
That is very intriguing. And
so you see, it's all connected. It's all connected.
Yeah, it is. And to me, that makes such perfect sense. And I'm
now,
I'm glad we've been able to have this conversation, because it opens up a whole bunch of things, and it also enlightens a lot of people on things that are going on. And,
so I'll tell you what I also found is, it was in the book, is there are two groups.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the defense industry, which is Boyd Bushman, a guy called Boyd Bushman, he's died now.
Yes.
He mentioned in one of his interviews that there's two groups. One's called the rustlers, and the other one's called the wranglers. Mm-hmm. And basically, the rustlers take the sheep, the herd, and the wranglers look after the herd. We're the sheep.
Yes.
So how I can imagine this thing working you have these spheres that are roaming around, and they follow, from what I can tell, a certain time of the day. Like it follows the shadow of the Earth. So they're always operating at night. You don't really see them during the day as much, but they operate at night.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that you find that these mutilations or animal mutilations, they don't occur in the cities. They occur in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the in Nevada, in the desert.
Right.
So what do you have? You have a limited force that is protecting certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a group that protects the Earth and a group that's trying to get to the Earth. So what happens is you have hit and run events. So a craft will come in, spot someone or something, and take it out. And these other guys will, they can't get there in time, or they're not in the area at the time. So you'll find that people who are in very isolated areas, like say in Russia, on top of in the middle of a snowstorm somewhere,
Very important case that was in
there you go.
Russia. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's the one. And guess what? The injuries match that of animal mutilations.
Yes. Yes.
Which means it's the same process, which means it's the same group doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these mutilations is pretty much a no-brainer that UFOs are involved, but the government, of course, doesn't want to admit that.
Right, exactly.
They don't want to talk about that at all. It scares the hell out of them.
I've actually been at a mutilization site, and it is quite bizarre. And I don't know how people can just say that, nope, that's just decay in the way that it is, because other animals, other things don't even go close to it. It's so different.
Or they'll say it's predator or something ridiculous like that.
Yes. So that brings me to an interesting point that you mentioned. What about David Paulides' work with 411 missing? Is it the same type of thing? Are we having that encounter when we're out and while we are?
I think that the evidence kind of indicates to me that they're either being eaten by reptilians or harvested by the Greys.
Mm-hmm.
It's a UFO thing. They might be being kidnapped by Sasquatches as well. They sometimes abduct people. Yeah,
and through my research, you're correct. It could be all of those. And we do have different types of alien species that are here within the ground and so forth. And I don't know, it seems like more energy or some weird kind of strange energy is coming up on the ground. And, I mentioned satellites to you earlier. And, as we get more and more towards the 5G and we're getting more and more to us putting out a lot of these areas, and where you've got the whole sky filled with these, it's kind of like a grid form, isn't it? Does that allow it to be more broadcast throughout the thing for and affect us more in that way? And also, you mentioned about the 20-mile type of thing. I've been in an area where there seems to be a very strange tower. And as I was looking at it, it happens to be on the 37th parallel, almost smack dab on the damn 37th parallel. And it seems like as far as you look, you'll see a tower, and then you'll see another tower and another tower. And it's almost like it's a pathway of some sort.
Yeah, it's a microwave relay.
Yeah, it's not a cell tower at all.
No.
It is some kind of other force. And when I was up there personally, you could just feel the stuff coming off of it.
You talk about ley lines?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and there are ley lines. There's so many different types of energy sources here, and as you mentioned, Tesla and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to that, and unfortunately, all of his stuff was assumed, let's say, taken by the government after his death. So we're not too sure what's going on with that.
There's currents generated by the rotation of the Earth through its own magnetic field. It acts as a giant homopolar generator. So the ley lines may be areas where currents are flowing through the crust of the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, what kind of, do you think this is like a plasma type laser type thing? Because that's what it would sound.
You mean the orbs?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a plasma around them. On the ones that are physically solid, there's definitely a plasma layer around the craft that actually contains a lot of energy. Like I think I mentioned before, the one that Jaime Maussan had or has when it crashed, it produced an explosion that killed a cow 100 meters away, and that must have been the energy in the plasma field, the electromagnetic field around the craft being dispersed all at once, and that energy also vaporized metal in areas near the poles of the device.
Interesting.
And the only reason I was able to break off a sample or cut off a sample for analysis was because those areas were somewhat damaged by heat. It was totally impervious to tools otherwise.
Wow.
Yeah. And what I found was that the people see these things as glowing spheres. They're like balls of light, and they think they're spirits and orbs or whatever. And what I found was that if it's using a field-based propulsion system, then it's a high energy going around the skin of the craft, the object.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a high energy source in a gas environment which interacts with our gas molecules and creates photons. Same thing as natural light.
Yeah, they're charged at very high voltage and it creates ionization.
Yeah. So you get like a real nice constant glow as it goes by. It's the same, and that is also why they glow as well, as I say. It depends on depending what mode or state they're operating in. You see them differently. Sometimes they look like bubbles.
Let me ask you this: with the different interactions that these spheres seem to take, do you believe that that we're able to determine which by the color, so to say, what their intent might be, whether it's like I said, to come down and abduct or just to, no.
I'll tell you why. It's because the different colors depending on the environmental factors at the time. Okay. So the different gases it passes through will generate different colors. It's just a byproduct.
Power output level as well.
So that's what causes the fiery orange or the blue or
that's
the
right.
white. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They go white when they're putting out a lot of power, and then orange or red when they're putting out less power.
Okay.
Orange is a fluorescence of the nitrogen molecules in the air, and then yellow is oxygen fluorescence. And I'm not sure what the red is, but it seems to be associated with low power.
Speaking of this, and this power of it is that there has to be some kind of system for, since our atmosphere is a lot of oxygen, oxygen is also flammable, correct?
But supports combustion, it's not flammable.
Yeah, well, I should say combustible. Yeah, you're correct. Doesn't that cause a problem for them, or do they have to scale it back in a certain way?
Well,
it could oxidize the surface of the sphere over time, but apparently they've solved that problem. They're made of titanium, and that develops a very impervious, tough layer of titanium oxide on the outside that protects the surface, similar to the way aluminum avoids burning up in the atmosphere. So that may be the answer.
Sure,
that layer protects it.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, just to interrupt. I know I don't know if you know, but I kind of figured out how to track these things as well. So yeah, this is what caught the attention of a lot of people. So basically, these spheres they look for things, right? They look particularly for light signatures. So it's basically these they look for the same light signature that a field-based propulsion system emits. So it's a real nice electric blue, or things like that. So what you do is you replicate that kind of light signature and you put it in an out-of-place area. So if you can imagine, like our own banking system uses like an artificial intelligence monitoring system, which looks for different spending transactions, right?
Right.
So what happens is that if you have a spend which is outside of your normal pattern, the bank will go, oh, that's funny. That should be highlighted. So what these things, they work on the same principle, but they do it with light signatures. So if you create a light signature that is out of place, you will get these things to come down and have a look at it. And when I did my test, I did the test 3,000 feet up a hill in the middle of nowhere. And we had all the same paranormal activity, EVPs, objects thrown, you name it, things on detectors in 20 minutes up a hill, 3,000 feet in the middle of nowhere, because we turned this thing on.
Interesting.
And what happens is that they come in and they look at it and they go, what's that? So they just keep looping it, going around the circle. And as they're looping it, you will start experiencing different paranormal effects. So I'll be talking, and on the recorder, my voice will talk again. You'll clone my voice and then talk again. And on one of my videos called Feel Spooked, where my friend of mine goes, oh, I feel a bit spooked. And I go, yeah, I do. And the voice goes in my voice, feel spooked.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And that, and all the time the detector's going zzz, and detecting this kind of like an energy field going around us. So that's what I mean, is that these things they use advanced stealth. Basically, they just bend light around the shell, and we can't see it. It could be in 2 feet in front of you, and you won't be able to see it because it just bends the light around the shell.
Right.
You might see a little distortion, but you don't see anything particular. And that's it. You know, and
you know, we call that effect a mimic. You know, we talk about a mimic spirit and so forth like that. So
yeah,
that even gives an explanation to the mimic thing, because we've actually heard that many times ourselves in that type of atmosphere when we are doing that, where it's not like saying you're talking, or same thing with people call a doppelganger. You know, people see us.
And then what generally starts happening is that it'll buzz around you for a while, and then you'll start seeing things. You'll see like shadows dart past.
So are you like, for production, are you gonna have this for sale? I'd love to be able to get one of these.
Well, I don't know. I'd like to get it out in the States, but it's difficult right now. But I'm working on it. You know.
You can sell one to every paranormal investigating team in the country. That's for sure.
Oh, that's for sure. Exactly. It'd be a hot item.
In the book, you can see what's triggered, and you see these guys with big eyes looking at you.
Interesting.
In the light, they're looking in the light. They're looking at us and stuff. So what happens is that when these spheres, because they're using rule-based artificial intelligence, they get stuck. They kind of think, well, we don't know what it is. It's triggering us, but we don't know what it is. So it will go up sort of the chain of command. They'll then insert people to say what's going on, and that's when you'll start seeing figures. You'll start seeing these little guys having a look. It's mental. It is weird. I mean, I must admit, it is unnerving.
Yeah.
We were in
you can extract them with pulses of near infrared and ultraviolet as well.
Yeah. And we were in the middle of a wood up north.
Okay.
No one around us, and suddenly we see this little guy stick his head up, looking at us, and we're like with the torch. And it's only a little guy, you know.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck is that? You know, is it a dog? And it's like, no, there ain't no dog. You know, and there's no animals in this woodland really. There's nothing like that. There's no deer or anything. And you're like, what the hell is that? You know, and we take pictures, and you come back and you see this guy with big eyes glaring at us, and you say there's a skull in the museum that matches that.
Yes.
You know, so you know, so all I'm saying is what's in that book. I mean, it I think is broken a lot down, and when people read it all, and even if they don't accept what I think, we've got one of these seers. Steve's got one. We can get hold of more. We know where they are, and we can analyze them, and we can take them to any scientist in the world and say, look at that. And they'll just sit there and go, look.
In private hands.
Yeah. So
let me ask you this. Do you believe that these spheres circulate around certain individuals more than others? Because like with the paranormal, so many of us, a lot of us experience a whole lot. And then you got those that never experience anything.
Yeah, I think
they focus in on certain individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think some people are put under more kind of like observation than others.
They probably focus in on experiencers. People.
Yeah, but believe me, I would have to agree with the experiencer side of it, because it always seems like somebody or something is watching me. It's not my own paranoia. It's just more along the lines of seeing things, including government type vehicles, government, different types of things like that. So,
do you believe that these spheres can give us thoughts, so to say?
Well, actually, funny you should say that. I think that they have the ability to broadcast signals straight into your brain.
Right.
Via your
message.
Yeah, via your auditory cortex.
I know for sure the aliens can do that, and this might be the mechanism by which they do it. These spheres.
Yeah, because even if you read the Bible, there's loads of quotes saying, "I had a vision, I had a vision, I had a vision," and all it is they just broadcast a signal into your cortex, and you'll see it like it's there, or for a moment it'll be like a dream state. And this is not far fetched. I mean, there's a product that came out recently where it allows you to beam audio straight into your head.
Right.
So in 50 years, we can do the same with video as well. It's nothing.
Voice to skull. It's like a primitive version of what the aliens are using, that the government invented a while back.
Well, extremely interesting. And not to talk about my experiences, but some of the experiences that I have had, it's I've had that type thing. It's like I would explain it to people like they dropped a disc inside my head, and I would see it behind my eyeballs. I mean, it was just so pure 4K HD, the whole 9 yards. But quite an amazing experience. I
mean, like a vision.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I personally remember sitting on a craft and not being able to see anything to my left, being able to see all the things that were going on to my right, and whatever it was on the left was what was putting this thing into my head, where I would see this full movie of a quite an amazing type of an event. So that.
They've done that to me too, and most experiencers that are frequent flyers get that, I'd say.
Yeah, it's quite it's quite unusual.
Pretty intense, can be.
Yeah, it is. It is very intense. It's very intense. Golly, guys, this is just fantastic. This is what do you think about it, Billy?
Like I said, boom. My head's very interesting, and a lot of it does make a lot of sense. And of course, like you said before, these spheres have been seen throughout time. Of course, nowadays with our technology and cameras and things like that, that would explain a lot of the increase in sightings.
We need to start building portable directional scalar wave detectors to detect these things more efficiently.
Do you agree that the military and the governments are doing that?
Oh, absolutely. They have a lot of.
Do you believe that the government is trying to duplicate it and use it as a weapon?
Well, the voice to skull technology is part of their program to duplicate this type of thing, and I have no doubt that they have detectors that will detect both UFOs and these orbs, and they have a lot of scalar wave weapons as well, like the Tesla death ray. I have reason to believe they have that, and the Tesla shield, where you can make big balls of energy, either cold or hot, that'll fry the electronics on things, or vaporize things, or freeze things. They have stuff like that. They also have, from what I understand, quantum potential weapons, the government calls them, where if you have intimate knowledge of a complex electronic system, you can get the system to keep operating even if you pull the plug and turn it off, or to not operate even though all systems are go and it has power.
That's interesting, because in a lot of these cases we've heard that look, the TV is off and it turns itself on. You see a lot of this stuff as we've gone through this, and man, that it leaves you with a little bit of scary thought in your mind, to be truthful with you. And Patrick, I want you to expel more on it, whatever you've got. I right now,
Yeah.
I've got a whole mess of questions and everything else in front of you, but my brain is going, wow, just feed me, because I
So I can tell you a bit more. Is where do you start? Okay, so you know the Bigfoot, like the teams, Bigfoot team.
yeah,
They were in touch with me a few days ago, and basically they want me to do some movie with them or something. And the thing is that it's because they can't. They were experiencing paranormal activity in the middle of the wood. So they were getting all the same weird paranormal effects you wouldn't have a haunted house is in the middle of the in the middle of the wood or the jungle, wherever they are.
right.
So like things like voices and like little girls' voices and singing and stuff like that. And then they'll find like gifting and stuff, but there's no footprints. There's nothing. It's just, all this weird little things.
Mm-hmm.
So they were speaking to me about it, and I said, well, what's going on is the reason why you can't find Bigfoot is because these things are inserted and extracted. What you see is these orbs. They see these little balls of light, which are the foo-fighter orbs. They're coming down, and they insert, and suddenly you see this big ape-like thing walking around. It's there for a few days, I think 3 days, and then it gets extracted. And if you get close to it, either through motorbike or through, even through plane or anything, these things will detect it and extract it, which is why they never found one. They only see one now and again. And what happens is that is why you don't see any blood trace. You don't find any half-eaten animal. You don't find any bones. You don't find any dead ones. They're sent in to do a job, whatever that is, and then they leave.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
also,
they proved just recently that Bigfoot is a hybrid creature. It's not some sort of missing link. It's a hybrid creature between human and some other unknown primate that came about within the last 30,000 years. So most likely the aliens created them.
Mm-hmm. And are using them in some manner.
Heavy work perhaps. And the mitochondrial DNA is human, but the nuclear DNA is from some unknown primate. It was very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Those results from being published too.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think a lot of the things that we will find, and if we ever find alien body or anything else, I think you're going to find human DNA in that. I mean, it's going to be all the same thing because we're all the same. So it gives them a plausible deniability when they get a sample in and they go, oh, it's got human DNA in it. Well, I think everything's got human DNA in it. I mean, because we were here from something, and it's all part of the grand plan of it all. Bigfoot is interesting to me because at the same time, when you're in an area and they don't want you there, it is very crazy because they will pick up and throw rocks. They make all kinds of different sounds. They can break trees in half. They can throw trees. There's different species of Bigfoot. That's where most people don't that haven't been involved with Bigfoot. There are other different species of Bigfoot. Some of them are more aggressive. Some of them are flat-headed. Some of them look like feral humans. And there are different types of creatures that I've seen roaming around that are quite odd. And here in Kentucky, we have quite a lot of them. And there was a movie out that was done, kind of a weird spoof, but on Hilliard, which was a little type beings that are caves, and we have these great cave areas through here, through Mammoth Cave and everything else. I think that they can hide in those caves, and I think they have for
no doubt.
They're similar story as the Hellier. I believe it's the same thing that they saw here in Hopkinsville so many years ago.
Could be the Kelly, Kentucky case in '55. But when you look at these things and you go, okay, you're kind of putting it in a situation where it's like radio waves. This is my small mind thinking. So And remember back in the old days, we used to not be able to get a good signal during the day, and at nighttime, all of a sudden you had like jumper stations, and you could get a station that was in Texas from Ohio, and same type of thing. So is there a certain time that the beam is, or these things are super active, and what effects it does? Solar flares, does other type of energy or other type of weather affect it?
Oh, I don't know. That one for you, Steve.
It should affect some, but we have no data on that.
Yeah.
It should affect some.
I mean, and if they were in, and if there is something that is working again, wouldn't they be protected in a cave system where they wouldn't be able to be found as much?
Definitely.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
There is something else.
In the depths of the ocean. I mean,
Bottom of the ocean too. The ocean's a pretty good shield against all kinds of radiation.
Right, exactly. All kinds of it. But we can't get there. For some reason, we don't explore that area as much as we do the others. Or if we do, we're not told about it.
They don't want us to see it as well.
Yes. Patrick, go ahead. You said you had something else?
Yeah, there is something else I noticed is that if Boy Bushman's right, as in there's two groups, then have we done anything about it? And the question is this. Well, what I found was this: is our missile shield, the U.S. missile shield.
Yes.
Ballistic missile shield, nuclear. They call it also.
Right. It's a missile shield. Whatever you want to call it. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
It's also deployed over Europe as well. But the thing is, it cannot defend against a nuclear attack because it hasn't got enough interceptors, and it takes too long to intercept one missile. It takes 3 to 5 minutes to intercept one missile. And that will take about maybe 3 to maybe 4 interceptors to do it. So if Russia or China is going to do an attack, they ain't going to launch one missile, or they're going to launch 100 or 1,000.
Right, exactly.
You got to ask yourself, what's it used for then?
Yes. And it goes. I kind of think it goes both ways. It's beaming here and it's beaming elsewhere, and What
it seems to be defending against is low volume, low Earth objects. So if it detects one of these other the bad ones, or it's used for that. So which will explain why it doesn't have that huge capacity. It's low volume. It's not high volume. It's low volume.
Right.
You know what I mean?
How many different? We call them you said wranglers and I'm sorry.
Wranglers, rustlers.
Yes. Yeah.
The rustlers and reptilians.
How many different types of wranglers and
I have no idea.
Do you think there's many of the same in the same force? That they are like a federation of some sort that work with each other?
I've heard that. Yeah, there's an alien federation. Huh?
Yes.
The Greys are an alliance of several similar species, like 7 different similar species. And I've heard the reptilians have their own alliance as well, and they all have some sort of galactic UN type of thing to keep
council of some sort. Yeah, I've heard that quite a lot.
Council, yeah.
Yeah,
there is something strange, as in our new Space Force, U.S. Space Force.
It's been around forever. I mean, that's when I first heard the Space Force, I'm so glad you mentioned that because when I first heard the Space Force terminology, we've had a Space Command since 93, 83 maybe, and it's just been continuing. And now all of a sudden it's a big ordeal. So go ahead and talk about it. I'm definitely interested.
I don't think the Air Force ever got out of the manned space business like they said. They just started NASA as a dog and pony show to cover up what they were doing. And Trump just put it under the auspices of the regular military rather than the Black Project people right now, which is probably a good move.
Yeah, it was. I think so too. Yeah.
So what I found was that the new symbol for Space Force is a triangle, right?
Right.
what's on these spheres? The triangle.
The triangle is a very important symbol to the Greys.
Right.
Three circles arranged in an equilateral triangle is the symbol of the Grey Alliance.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. What about
Sorry.
an octagon shape?
Say again?
An octagon.
Octagon?
I don't know about that.
That sounds more reptilian.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny because
Sure,
of the fact that I bring that up real quick because you were mentioning the triangles and so forth, and I wanted to get back to that real quick. But the building that we were talking about, Octagon Museum, is actually an 8-sided octagonic building that was built by Masonics, by Masonic members.
Well, they're more allied with the reptilians, I believe, rather than the Greys.
I hate to hear that because I don't like reptilians. It tastes like chicken.
They're bad news by all accounts. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Patrick. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
What was I saying?
About the triangles, about that triangular shape.
Yeah. So on the spheres, there's these little triangles, which is why people get scratches in threes.
Interesting.
So you have 3 points, and then each corner is edged. So what these spheres do is scuff you, and then you get these long tram lines of 3 lines down your arm.
Interesting.
So it looks like it looks like it's doing some sort of blood sampling or genetic sampling, something like that.
And as we talked a little bit before the show, and in Diverting, there is the only thing that this can be is, you know, we're all energy, we're all this stuff, but it's all about DNA, is it not? I mean, it's not about anything else. You want to expel on that a little bit?
Well, the only unique resource on the Earth is DNA.
Mm-hmm.
If you want gold or silver or titanium, or you don't come to Earth. You go to asteroids, where you can mine. I mean, there's one asteroid out there. I forget what they call it, but it has more resource worth than the whole world economy. So why would you bother coming here when you can go to that?
Yeah.
So the only unique resource here is genetics. And the more rarer your genetics, the more specific it is, the higher market value those genetics will be. Now, if you've got other groups out there, probably if they're a much older race than the Earth, or humans, we say, they're probably suffering from synergy, which is where genetics start crossing over and becoming cancerous. They start breaking. So the only way you can extend your life is by inserting new DNA into the genetic pool. So you have to get new DNA, and you insert it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Greys have told experiencers that they were damaged due to overuse of genetic engineering and transporters and exposure to radiation and industry, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So their genetics are definitely not what they should be. So yeah, they may have to prepare themselves.
Yeah. And what also I noticed was that when I was writing my book, I noticed something really obvious, which is if you look at our solar system, it looks like there's been a massive war. Mm-hmm. Because you look at Mars is in a terrible state. If you look at the asteroid belts, they look like where planets were, and they've been shattered, they've been broken up.
Right.
And in fact, there's a number of them. I think there's one. There's a number of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence the asteroid belt is from a planet that exploded rather than from a planet that never formed, like the conventional theory says.
Yeah,
and I've heard that, and I kind of buy into that theory because it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And
they're too differentiated into different densities to have been from a planet that never formed. It was obviously a planet-sized body at one point.
Right.
You see pieces of the core that are nickel irons, and intermediate pieces that have metal and stone, and then stonies that are parts of the mantle or core or crust, rather.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is why the spheres are seen in woodlands, because it's a natural resource of genetic evolution. So you have the firewall ones, which are on top guarding the airspace.
Yeah.
You have the communication level at the base, and then you have the ones in the middle, which are the environmental, and they're basically roaming around, looking at woodlands, naturally evolving DNA, even human DNA in graveyards and things like that. Because you look at a graveyard, what is it? It's really a a database of genetic resource for the last 100 years.
100%, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Follow you 100% with that because
That's what it's all about. And that's why, they'll get poltergeist activity or weird activity in the middle of a wood near a graveyard or something.
Yes, very interesting. Very interesting. Gosh, guys.
I'll tell you something will really blow your head off, actually. if you can really go.
Already coming on.
This only happened about a month ago or 2 months ago. Because I have a few friends of mine who go to the same place I go to do my research and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they were in 30 East Drive, and they saw a woman in uniform walk in. And I said, "A woman in uniform?" And he goes, "Yeah." And then a big ball of light came towards us, took a left turn, and then it all disappeared. The light disappeared and the woman disappeared. So I said, "That's weird." So I had to dig around, and I found this woman who's in Space Force. And I sent him a picture, and he goes, "Is that her?" And he goes, "Is that a uniform?" And he goes, "Yeah."
Wow, that's crazy.
So what's happening is that for us to go outside of our planet and go to Mars and other planets, we have to become allies with whoever controls this system.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's why every space force on the planet, every space agency on the planet has that vector symbol on it that NASA has. It's common to every patch of every space agency on the planet.
And then what's happening is
really signifies that they have permission from the Greys or whoever to go into space.
That is interesting.
It seems to be a case of
very interesting.
See what a firewall does. Yeah, what a firewall does, it protects it stops what comes in, and also stops what leaves. So if it doesn't like something that's leaving, it will blow it up. And if it doesn't like something, it will blow that up as well. It controls access to our domain.
Jim Mars once said that Earth is under quarantine due to the ferocity and the primitive nature of its life forms. Maybe that's true.
Yeah.
Could well be. Could well be.
And even I don't want to say the name in case I get sued, but a spaceship recently made by a certain company who are very famous at the moment blew up.
Yes.
It blew up about 2 years ago. If you slow the video down, you'll see what blew it up.
That was sabotage. Was one of those orbs. Yeah.
It was one of these spheres.
Yeah, I saw that.
That was interesting. That's
definitely sabotage.
Very, very interesting. Do you think that happened in the NASA program also?
Probably. I can't think of any cases offhand, but probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that orb flew by the rocket when it was fueled up on the pad and hit it with some sort of a beam weapon, probably an infrared laser or a Tesla death ray, I would say. And it punched a hole in the second stage and ignited the fuel.
Wow. Yeah.
And then they Photoshop it out afterwards.
Sure. Yeah. Just like
they all saw it.
A lot of different stuff out. This is so darn interesting. We're running out of time. Guys, would you please let us do another show with you as soon as we can possibly do it and really get into more of this meat and potatoes. But what I'd like to do is let you guys speak about websites and all the other stuff. And we want to pitch this book, and because Quantum Paranormal is such a breath of fresh air to the paranormal side of it. And I think it's going to wake up a lot of people's minds. And remember, look, folks, you got to have an open mind. Not so open that your brain falls out, but have an open mind to be able to take in all this stuff, because these discoveries are coming rapidly. And it is something that's very important to look at. Let's all move forward. We talk about paranormal unity. We talk about all this stuff. The stuff that Patrick is talking about is very good to listen to. And could hold a lot of information for the future. And I'm so glad that you took the time out of it, because you got to take a lot of heat from paranormal people. You know that.
Mhm.
But you're not going to take any heat from here. So
I am the most banned person on the internet when it comes to paranormal stuff.
Well, we're
we-
working on it.
If we get funding, we could really gather a lot of information about these orbs and the alien internet.
yeah.
That'd be something to do for the future.
I
and-
just remembered something else.
Oh, excellent.
Is Steve, when he was doing his work with Dr. Sorry, what was his name? Dr.
Dr. Lear, yes.
where they're extracting implants.
Right. I was patient 15 on this program. Actually, he took an implant out of my toe, and I had that, or I analyzed that myself, and the same equipment I analyzed the sphere sample with.
And think about it: is that these implants, they can't broadcast that far. They can't broadcast up to a satellite. So where are they broadcasting? Where are they connecting to?
They're connecting to this web that's being made in this area.
That's right.
Makes total sense.
Which means
The power that an implant would be able to broadcast would be only a watt or so at most. Otherwise, the area of the body that was adjacent to it would heat up too much. So,
right.
Yeah, the power has to be extremely low. But
And I was talking about the tower that we were close to, and I was with another abductee, and he was actually showing me this and part of this case, and I was surprised that I have an implant BB behind the ear here, and also another one, and he has one in his hand.
that's common.
And it was quite amazing how it affected those implants when we were there. It was just amazing. I just can't.
Often when somebody comes to try to study them, the implants will start transmitting.
Mm-hmm.
They're not always transmitting, I found out, or Dr. Lear and I found out in our research.
Yeah,
But,
we want to talk about that. There's so much. I mean, you guys have opened up so much, and I am so glad that you're bringing this to the forefront. And Steve, I want to talk about nanotechnology with you. There's so much stuff to be able to cover with you guys, and you're just a wealth of information. And man, I appreciate it so much. I wish I could give you 2 or 3 hours of this, but what I'll do is, if you will, I will be more than happy to do 2 or 3 shows with you, and to be able to get this out any way you can. And if you would like, I'll also send you information as we're doing our investigations and some stuff.
That'd be great. And there's definitely hours of material here to talk about.
Yeah, we'd gladly work with you with that. So, but go ahead and tell us where we can get the book and everything else. I'm going to post the links for the book. I'll have all that down, and we'll have a copy of the book in the promo also. But tell us where people can get a hold of you, because this is just needs to be out there, and I'm sure that you're going to get a lot of stuff coming from it.
So the book you can buy on Amazon. It comes in 3 formats. You got the ebook, which is $9.95.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the black and white version of the paperback, which is £9, £12, something like that, or $12. Sorry. And then you have a color version, which I recommend because you see the picture's much clearer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit more expensive. That's about £30. But the reason why it's expensive is because Amazon charge pretty much that to print it. So I don't actually make much money out of it. It is what it is,
Right.
The website is Quantum Paranormal, or quantum-paranormal.co.uk. You can see me and Steve and our interviews there. That's just gone online, so we're going to be adding more stuff to it over time. What else? Also on Facebook, I have a small group called Quantum Paranormal. And in there it has a lot of my demos, a lot of my work, explanations, everything I can, or comes out of my brain goes in there. And the thing is that the paranormal communities as a whole, that if I don't know if you noticed, but if they notice something, they will dig into it and will really put you to the ropes over it. But in that group, everyone's pretty quiet. so far, I mean, I've tried my best to get interviews with paranormal groups and other channels and stuff. But when I sort of mentioned about what we found out, they're difficult. They don't want to know. They're just like, that's not spirits and stuff. And it's a shame because they all say they're looking for the truth and looking for stuff. But I wish they would look a bit more in my direction, or in our direction. So.
Well, I will make this clear with you that we will personally help you in that way, and we will try to steer some people over that way, because I've been doing the paranormal field for 43 years, and I know quite a lot of individuals, and what we're talking about and doing, and we talk about it all being related, because Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal are all related, and you bring it all together.
Yeah.
Thing. And there are so many people that are out there talking about it all being as one. And I think that is so important. And it's a definitely great theory, and it's an interesting theory. And I will dedicate our time to it.
Yeah, my just a note is what kind of caught the attention of a lady called Melissa Tittle. She's a producer of on Gala, or however you pronounce it. She's done loads of stuff in the UFO field.
Yeah.
What caught her eye is what I sent my book to her, and she gave it to someone who's an engineer, a very very scientific guy, should we say? And he read my analysis, and he said, yeah, he's got it right. And that is, to be honest with you, this book is the only book in the world where I can give it to a random technical guy and they'll agree with it.
Yes. And that's the problem with the paranormal, because you can't get science to agree with it,
Yeah, there's not enough theory behind it, or good
right.
Data that everybody agrees with, I guess.
Even if they don't like what I'm saying, or don't agree with my theory or perception of the modeling on it, they have Steve's work.
Yes, exactly. And Steve's work
and that's it.
Wonderful. And it's so glad. I'm so glad that you guys are together and you're working on this, because it means a lot. I mean, I just cannot tell you how much this is done. And as I said, I am looking forward to having another show on, so we can expand on it, and we'll bring in abductees and everyone else. I sure do appreciate your guys' time. I know it's late over in the UK and it's early over in California, but I sure do thank you so much for spending the time with us. And Billy, do you have a closing comment or anything?
I'm blown away, guys, and I so want to do this again. So please come back.
Sounds good. If people want to access my analyses of some of the implants that Dr. Lear removed from patients, especially mine and patients 16 and 17, you can go to my website, alienevidenceinc.webs.com. And if you want to scan for alien implants or recent alien abduction evidence, you can make an appointment with me at 805-625-2549. It's my cell phone number.
Fantastic. This has been awesome. My hat goes off to you, and I don't take my hat off very often. Guys, again, thank you. And audience, I hope you enjoyed this. And as we just talked, we're going to be coming back with them at another time, hopefully very soon. And we're going to continue this conversation on the quantum paranormal and beyond. So thank you all for listening. You all have a great night. And thank you. Thank you guys. Good night.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good night.